Hello everyone and welcome to this series. And in this series we will be going through on how to make an object from scratch for Freeso. And in my series I'll show you how to make a vase from scratch. We will texture it, bake it, and on the other parts I'll show you how to make the sprites and how to export your mesh properly in 3D so you can use it in the 3D part of the game. And after this series, you'll be ready to follow Raven's guide on how to make an object from scratch in Volcanic with the codings and all of that. So, this is a template file by Raven, and I'll leave a link down below so that you can download it. And it will come in a zip file. So when you extract it, you'll see a blend file and a zip file. You have to extract this zip file. There's a plugin inside. You have to install this plugin. And also, I'll be using UV squares. I extracted here. There's also a plugin inside the folder that you have to install. You can Google on how to install a plugin. There are a ton of tutorials on how to do it. And when you install, Freeso's settings will be here. And about UV squares, I'll show them later on. So, before we start, I will change this into median point, and I would click on this to get the arrows back. Here, I would disable all of these. We don't need them for now. So, we'll zoom in. And we want to make a vase, and here is our reference photo, which we are going to use, the bottom of the lamp. So I'll start by adding a circle. We want our trees count to be as low as possible, so I will decrease these vertices to 12 and scale it down. And I want to mention that one big square represents one tile in the game. So I'll scale it a little bit more and go into edit mode. And in edit mode, we'll select all vertices, go to vertices here, click E to extrude, and click Z to lock it to Z axis. And just about here, I'll scale it a little bit and move it down just like this. I'll extrude again, Z axis goes up, add a loop with Control R, move it up a little bit, scale it up, move both of these, extrude this a little, will be the mouth, and I'll add another loop here. Extrude, click escape, and then scale it like this, move it up. I would select this, enable proportional editing by clicking O and scaling it just a little bit, not too much. I would scale it on Z axis a little bit. Make this part a little down. So our mesh looks dark in the solid mode because the normals aren't facing the correct way. They are facing inside. So I would go to edit mode, select all the faces, click W and go flip normals. And I will go to modifiers and add a subdivision modifier. So we will adjust our mesh a little bit more. I would select this loop and click Shift E to make it sharp. Sharp though. And I would do the same to this loop. Maybe I can add a loop here and make it bigger. I would select this and proportional edit it up. And I would disable proportional and increase this a little. So, and I will go to Tools and click Smooth. So when you're happy with the mesh, just click Apply so that you get more loops you can work with. And we will just go ahead and delete the unnecessary loops and rings. And also I will disable this clipping thing. So to make our material, we will make sure we are in Cycles Render. I will drag this window up. I'll click this, click Node Editor, and here I'll make a new material. And here I'll just go to Material Shader tab. And as you see, there's a diffuse shader, just delete it. We will be working with a principled shader. Principled shader looks a little scary for starters, but believe me, it is not. Base color is basically the color of the object. You can plug in a texture image here and it will appear instead of the color. Subsurface is used for skins. Right now we don't need it. Metallic is, 1 is metallic, as you can see here, and 0 is non-metallic, organic objects. There, you shouldn't use in between. It's not realistic. But if you don't want realism, you can just do whatever makes you happy here. But I'll keep it at 0. Specular is the shine of the object. I would make it 1 for the vase. And specular tint is, if you keep it at 0, the shines will be white. But if you keep it at white, let's say, it will tint more to the object's color rather than straight up pink. But I will keep it at 0. Roughness is the reflectiveness of an object. 1 is not reflective, but 1 is not reflective, but 0 is like a mirror-like material. But I'll keep it at 0.5 for now. Anisotropic is for metallic objects. Right now it's 0, so we don't need it. But it is to get the effect of bottom of the pan and that kind of materials. Sheen adds more light to the edges of the object. I really didn't find any use for this yet. Sheen tint is connected. Clear coat is like a clear coat on top of a car, so we don't really need it here. And IOR and transmission, again, I never used them. So to get this marble texture, I'll go to Add Texture, Image Texture. And I will open up the marble texture from here, which is the seamless marble texture, and connect it here. But as you can see, it doesn't appear on the object because it is not UV mapped yet. So I'll go back to solid mode. And one thing you have to know is while UV mapping, when you select a loop and go mark seam, you slice the mesh from the loop and lay it down flat. What I mean by that is if you select everything and go unwrap, you'll see that the mesh is cut from the loop and laid down on the table. So this edge and this edge is the same edge, which is this, but we sliced it so it is opened up flat. And after we UV map, we'll go to T, MISC, select all the UV map and click to grid by shape. And when we do it, it makes the UV map squares and rectangles, which is really useful because it doesn't distort the texture we are going to use. Now scale it down a little bit. Looks fine. So if we go back, rendered mode, you will see the texture on our object. I will drop the roughness a little. And specular is the full. I don't want to change anything else. I would change the environment map to an environment map of mine, which is keep it at 1. This controls how shiny the environment map is. I would want it at 1. So for my taste, this template's shine is too much. So I will go to World tab and here I'll disable ambient occlusion and we will get more shadows that way. So this part of our mesh is darker because the light here is less. So I would add a mesh, a plane, move it up and rotate it. A little big, make a new material for it and disable diffuse, add emission, go into rendered again. I'll make it 4, make it a little bigger, maybe 3. I'll pull it far away a little bit more. 5. Seems to be fine. So, to add the gold accents to our mesh, I'll go to edit mode and make a new material. And let's call it gold. I'll delete diffuse, make a new principled shader. I'll go to materials tab. I would make a new loop cut and drop it here. Select this loop by holding down Alt and right-clicking on this ring. And then assign the gold material we just made. Make the base color some gold color. And here on metallic, just make it 1. And make it brighter a little bit. Looks fine to me. And I'll drop roughness to here. Since it is a reflective material, I'll drop the roughness. I'll increase the specular a little bit. And metallic should be fully at 1. And I'll do the same thing here. And when you loop cut and move your loop around, you'll see that your texture moves too. If you drop your loop and here click on correct UVs, it will fix it. And if you select a loop and click G 2 times, you can move it like this. I'll I will make it higher a little bit. Select this face, apply gold. I will go up to the mouth part. I'll add another loop here. I'll select this loop and assign the gold. I will select this loop and assign gold as well. I would go ahead and add another loop of gold here as well. So I want to make handles for this mesh so that we can decide the rotation of it better in Sprite. So a technique I recently discovered is go to add a mesh and circle, and let's keep it at 8, rotated by 90. Push it inside the mesh. And then I'll go into edit mode, select everything, Shift D, move it here, rotate it like this, and make sure it is floating on the surface. We will push it into the mesh later on. I would scale it down, this one as well. Oh, you should go to vertex select, my bad. Make it smaller. So, I'll drop it here. Select everything, click space, click bridge edge loops, and add a number of cuts. I think 2 would be good enough, or 3 should be enough. And smoothness decides the size of the handle, so I think this should be enough, or maybe a little. And profile factor, I would decrease it a little, not too much. And profile shape, you can change how it will look if you change the profile factor too much. But our handle turns out to be inside out, so I would move it here. Select this loop, click O. When you're dragging, you can scroll your wheel, use your scroll wheel to push this out. You can add loops here. So this is our handle. I'll select it and I'll Shift D and then move it to this side. And before I copy it to the other side, I'll go here, give it the material that we just made, which is, I believe, this one. And then we will UV unwrap. We will select the inner loop because when you slice the mesh with the mark seam in game, there are shading problems. So you want the mark seam to be at the places that aren't seen in game. So you select everything, unwrap, and then you go to grid by shape again. And we will make it small and drop it here. So I can duplicate it here, rotate it around by 180. Make sure it is lined up. One more important thing is, since our mesh is one-sided, when we enable backface cooling, you'll notice that inside of the mesh and the mouth is not appearing. So you have to go enable this modifier called solidify. What it does is it duplicates the faces on outside to inside, and it does the same thing for your UV as well. So what outside gets is also what inside gets. However, we don't want that to happen because inside of the vase will be visible. So what you have to do is adjust the solidify first, but I think it looks okay to me. But I would make it 0.01 and then I will apply it. So what I would do is apply the solidifier and then make sure the seam is still here. And then I'll select my whole mesh and zoom into the mouth. I'll not select this loop and I will not select this loop so that it makes our job easier. Now I'll click unwrap. And as you can see, we get two, one inside and one outside. And then we can just select inverse and unwrap those two. I'll just position them like so. Grid by shape here. It won't be that visible, so you shouldn't worry too much about those. But if you want them, you still can keep them by doing this. And then I'll select again. I'll select this by clicking Ctrl L. Open up the T. Go to misc to grid by shape. I'll scale it down because we still have the handles and the inside. I'll do the same thing for this one. So, for the handles, we will drop them down here. And this one can be here. And I'll join them all together and see that the UV clashes. You don't want that to happen. So they work perfect. I'll separate the handles once more. So our vase is ready to be baked. I will get back. We have our lights, our vase, the handles. I would keep the ground plane. However, I would get rid of the floor tile and the wall. Make sure our mesh doesn't sink inside. It looks ready. So I have to add a new image texture to all the materials. Make a new image texture here. 1024 by 1024. Name it bake. Select bake here. Make sure it's not connected to anything and it is highlighted so that Blender knows what it is supposed to bake into. And I'll copy it and I'll go to the gold material. Make sure it is selected, not connected to anything. I'll render once more. I will make this a little darker. So we are ready to bake the material. However, I would duplicate the vase just in case and go back to this this one. For baking, I will add subdivision to the handles so they look nicer to be baked on. And I will select both of my meshes. I will check if the back looks fine. And I will go ahead, change the device type to GPU if it is possible. You don't care about any of those. You only care about sampling and bake. In sampling here, I would make it 10 for testing purposes. However, it will come out grainy. And in bake, make sure to select the meshes and hit bake. We'll see. And click N, and in shading, click shadeless to see your texture better. It looks perfectly fine, so let's go ahead and bake it with samples 200. So our mesh has baked, and this is the final look of it. Texture and the mesh is ready for part 2 and part 3. And right now the trees count of the mesh is too high, but we will be dealing with that in part 3. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll be seeing you on the next one.